Hi, I'm Marla. A few weeks ago, my mom called just to let me know something casual. My sister was moving into my apartment. The one I bought, paid for, signed and sealed. But she said it like it was theirs all along, like I was lucky to have ever thought it was mine. What would you do if your family tried to erase you with a smile? Let me know in the comments. I had just ended a call with a client in Melbourne when my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen flash on my screen in months. Mom, not Corinne in my contacts. Still just Mom. I hesitated. Not because I was busy, but because I already knew deep in the kind of knowing that doesn't need logic, that nothing good followed that name anymore. I answered. Her voice was light, cheerful. It was always more dangerous when she sounded pleasant. We've decided Davina will move into the apartment while she's in college, she said, like it was the most natural sentence in the world. I stood still in my small balcony, coffee still steaming in the mug I had yet to sip. I'm sorry? I asked, more reflex than question. She continued, casual as ever. It's perfect, isn't it? Close to campus, no rent, no need for her to feel like a burden. I blinked at the view of Sydney, the sun setting behind the skyline. My fingers curled around the handle of the cup. It's our apartment anyway, she added. It always was. The mug didn't break, but I heard a tiny crack inside me. I didn't argue. Not then. I said I had to go, that my connection was cutting out, that I'd call her later. I never did. I sat down, pulled out my laptop, and opened the folder labeled Deed Ridge Apartment. There it was, the scanned copy of the transfer, the email thread between me, the notary, and the lawyer, my name in black ink, my signature, my money. How do you lose a home you bought twice, once with cash and again with faith? Hours later, I opened the family group chat, hoping maybe this was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But no, the latest photo was Davina standing in my bedroom. The bed was gone. The walls had been painted over. A fake fiddle leaf fig stood where my bookshelf used to be. Getting Davina settled in at her new place, Mom had captioned. No tags, no mention, no acknowledgement that I'd ever existed in that space. The quietest way to erase someone is to stop saying their name. I scrolled up. Months of messages, not one addressed to me, not even on my birthday. They hadn't forgotten. They had omitted. They just needed me out of the way long enough, I whispered, my voice barely louder than the hum of the city outside my window. I stared at my phone for a long time, thinking of calling Davina, of asking her if she even knew what she had moved into. But I didn't. Instead, I opened a new draft email. To Mom and Dad. Subject, Apartment Body. I need to clarify something. I stared at the blinking cursor. Deleted. I reopened the legal folder, read every line again. And then, out loud to no one but the plants on my sill, I asked the one question that had always been sitting quietly behind my obedience. If they lied about this, what else did they lie about? The first photo didn't mean anything at first. I was scrolling aimlessly through my phone during lunch when I saw it. Someone in a neighborhood Facebook group posted a thank you note. Big shout out to Corinne for the lovely chairs at the garage sale. Incredible deal. Chairs. I clicked the image, squinting. Custom oak, handmade, from a craftsman in Raleigh. I bought them as a gift to myself on my 30th birthday. Paid in full, no discounts, no hand-me-downs, mine. There they were. Sitting on someone else's porch, I kept scrolling. My old rug, the woven one from my study, the teal blender I bought when I first moved into the apartment, the glass lamp with the chip in the base that I never got around to fixing. Each photo sliced quietly. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even message the poster. I just sat there holding my phone like it was a fire I had to balance in my palm. I called Mom, once, twice. No answer. The next day, my phone pinged again, this time with an Instagram tag. Davina. The caption. Officially moved in. Couldn't have done this without Mom and Dad. She posted a full tour. My bookshelf in the corner, stacked with books I never got back. The throw pillow I bought from a thrift shop in Asheville, the one that still smelled like lavender. The kitchen tiles I chose, grouted by hand. No mention of me. Not once. In the comments, someone asked, "Wow, your place?" And she replied, "Yeah, they gave it to me to help with college." They, not Marla, not my sister. Just they. I lay in bed in Sydney, phone hovering above my chest, as the likes and heart emojis stacked up. There was a moment, barely a flicker, where I almost typed something. A comment, a reminder, a correction. But I didn't. I could already hear the family group chat in my head. She's just dramatic. She always makes things about herself. Can't she let Davina have one thing? So I watched my things become hers, my name become theirs, my silence become erasure. I hovered over the block button. My finger paused on it for a long, breathless second. But I couldn't do it. It wasn't about the post. It wasn't about the furniture. It was about what they'd decided I didn't get to be anymore. I wasn't the oldest daughter. I wasn't the homeowner. I wasn't even the one they thanked. I was edited. And for the first time in my life, I realized that being quiet wouldn't save me. But it had already erased me. The message came while I was making tea. A simple ping, a DM from someone I hadn't spoken to since sophomore year. I saw your sister moved into your place. Thought you sold it? My hand paused mid-pour. The steam curled up, fogging my glasses. I typed, "No, I didn't sell it." Then backspaced. Typed again. "Not exactly." Backspaced again. Eventually I just closed the app. No reply. She probably meant well. Probably didn't think twice. But it stuck to my skin like static. It wasn't just my parents rewriting the story. Other people believed it too. Other people saw my name missing and didn't even blink. My story wasn't mine anymore. It had been handed off, simplified, turned into something more convenient to carry without me in it. I placed the mug down without drinking. Later that evening, my phone rang again. Mom. Of course. Her tone was soft, but it wasn't kindness. It was that syrupy version of patience she used when she thought I needed correcting. "You've always been like this, Marla," she said. "Selfish. Remember when you wouldn't let Davina borrow your shoes for her recital?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I knew the script. You don't know how to share. You never did. You only think of yourself. Honestly, I'm surprised Davina still looks up to you. You were always so cold. Halfway through her speech, I pressed end, not abruptly. Not with rage, just enough. I stood in front of the mirror, looked at myself for a long time. My face was calm, but my jaw ached from clenching. My eyes tired, not red. I whispered, maybe I was never cold. Maybe I was just tired of being melted down. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the call, but because of the shoes. I was 17. Davina was 10. Her dance recital was on the same weekend as my graduation. She wanted to wear my only pair of white patent leather flats. I said no. They were all I had for my cap and gown photos. She cried. Mom slammed the bedroom door, hissed through her teeth. "You're going to grow up into someone no one wants to be around." The words didn't hurt right away. They settled in me like dust, quiet, invisible, but everywhere. I laid in bed, curled on my side, the memory too loud to ignore. I could still see the scuffed toe of those shoes, still feel the heat in my cheeks as I stood at my own graduation, wondering if I should have gone barefoot just to prove I wasn't selfish. And yet, here I was, 15 years later, still being measured by that moment, still being cast in the role of the girl who didn't lend the shoes. It was never about the shoes. It was about what those shoes represented to them. That I could say no, that I had something they couldn't control, that I drew a line. They never forgave me for drawing it. And now, they'd painted over that line. Covered it with hashtags and photo captions and smiling emojis that didn't include me. They didn't need to scream to erase me. They just had to talk louder around my silence. The login failed twice before I realized it wasn't a glitch. I had entered the password right. It was saved, auto-filled even. I clicked again. Same message. Access denied. My chest tightened. Not panic, not yet, but something worse. That knowing again. The same knowing I had when Corinne first said the word ours. I emailed the property manager. No response. The next day I followed up. Still nothing. By day 3, I sent the email with a subject line I knew would trigger action. Urgent. Unauthorized access to property records. The reply came within an hour. Polite, short. Per instructions from Corinne Hall, we've canceled the rental contract. The apartment will no longer be listed under our management. I read it again, then again. Corinne Hall, My mother. My mother who had no legal right to touch that apartment. My mother who had been CCing herself into things she didn't own for decades. I wasn't CC'd. I wasn't even considered. This wasn't silence. It was censorship. I stared at the screen long after the email had stopped loading. The edges of my vision buzzed. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. But I didn't reply. I requested the original cancellation email. It arrived late that night. As the acting owner of the property, it began. I sat back. Acting owner. Signed, Corinne Hall. The lies weren't even subtle anymore. They were confident, performed, well-rehearsed, like she knew no one would dare challenge her. I didn't reply. Not to the property manager, not to her. I opened a new folder and labeled it, Things They Can't Deny. I screenshotted every word, every timestamp, every header. And then I opened another file, my own contract. The deed, the wire transfer receipt, the notary seal, all mine. I didn't know yet what I was building. A case, a memory box, a shield. But I knew one thing. I would never again let anyone speak on my behalf without receipts. That night, I walked circles in my apartment. The soft hum of the fridge was the only sound. As the acting owner, I whispered it to myself like a curse, like a joke only I could hear. I thought back to all the times they had made decisions without me, when they planned family trips and told me after the fact, when Corinne moved Davina into my childhood bedroom without telling me, when Douglas co-signed Davina's car without asking me to weigh in, though the down payment came from my gift. This wasn't the first time I'd been written out of the equation. It was just the first time they used ink. I sat down, opened a spreadsheet, and created tabs. Documents, transactions, statements, photos. I would not yell, I would not call, I would not cry, but I would document. The message came while I was folding laundry, a photo attachment, the kind you don't expect but recognize instantly. Thought you should see this, Loretta's text read. I opened it, expecting something innocent. It wasn't. Corinne stood at a family barbecue, her arm looped around Davina. Someone else had taken the photo and captioned it, 3 generations of strength. But I wasn't in it, not just physically, symbolically. Loretta had drawn a red circle around a section of the group text screenshot. Having just one daughter to worry about is enough. My breath stayed stuck somewhere in my chest. Not rising, not falling. They hadn't just moved me out of the apartment, they'd moved me out of the family. I stared at the screen until it dimmed and went black, then tapped it back awake, then let it fade again. When people erase you with a smile, you don't even get the dignity of goodbye. I didn't respond to Loretta, not right away. I think she knew I needed the silence, but she didn't leave me in it for long. 2 days later, another message arrived, a voice recording, less than a minute long. Loretta's name at the top. I hesitated, pressed play. Corinne's voice came through first, clear, confident, not knowing she was being recorded. Marla thinks she owns that apartment, she said. But who bought her first interview suit? Who proofread her college essays? She thinks she's self-made. Please. A pause. Then Loretta's voice, quieter at the end. She didn't know I was recording. Now you do. I played it again, then a third time, just to make sure it wasn't a dream I'd fabricated to match the ache in my ribs. But it was real. Too real. And the worst part wasn't the words. It was that I wasn't surprised. The version of me they'd crafted had always been more convenient than the truth. Cold, ungrateful, entitled, never mind the hours I spent on scholarship applications because they said they couldn't help. Never mind that the job suit came from Goodwill and I hemmed the sleeves myself. Never mind that I earned every piece of that apartment square by square. The story had always been theirs to tell. Until now, I drafted a message. I saw what you said. Then I deleted it. Instead, I opened my desktop, renamed the folder I'd been building, Inheritance of Silence. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my notes app. Typed, sometimes revenge isn't doing something. It's keeping the receipts until you're ready to show them. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But for the first time, I felt something settle into place. Not peace, not yet, but resolve. I stared at the transaction again. $118,000. Transferred from my account in 2017, labeled apartment purchase, my note, my signature, my silence. I remembered how proud I was then, how grown up I felt buying something outright. No loans, no mortgage, just discipline. Years of skipping vacations, eating frozen meals, working double hours. And now, according to my mother, it was a gift. Not to myself, but to Davina. "We used that money to help your sister with college," she had said last week, as if we were discussing a minor error on a grocery receipt. Davina, who had a full scholarship, who hadn't paid a cent for tuition. I opened the old folder again, the one labeled savings_2017, pulled up the wire receipt. Everything was there, every line. I whispered to the empty room, "No, you didn't help her. You helped yourselves." My heart wasn't racing. That was the strange part. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was still, focused, the kind of stillness that comes before something moves. I logged into the old online banking portal, the one I helped Corinne set up years ago when she couldn't remember passwords or find the shift key. She had never changed the login, not once. Within minutes, I was looking at her archived statements. 3 days after my wire transfer, there it was. Luxury Caribbean cruise, $11,920. Lodging, dining, spa packages, upgrades, scroll. Home furnishings, $3,400. Wine Cellar Club membership, $875. Not one tuition payment, not one. I screenshotted every single line, compiled the files, named the new folder, Proof Not Tuition. I printed them that night, one by one, slow and methodical, like building a case brick by brick. The deed of sale, the notarized transfer, the cruise booking, the receipts from the furniture shop. Each paper cooled in my hands before I set it aside. By midnight, my floor looked like a war map, flags of betrayal, contracts once built on trust, documents that no longer needed emotion to explain what happened. I didn't say her name out loud. Didn't say his either. Instead, I folded the stack, tucked them into a blue leather binder, and placed it next to my suitcase. It looked harmless there, just a slim binder with a zipper. But it carried weight, not just of ink, but of years, of being told, "You owe us," of being made to believe that help was always conditional, that generosity had interest rates. I ran my hand over the cover, then zipped it shut. "You called it help," I said, steady and quiet. "I call it theft." I picked up my phone and typed a single sentence into my notes app. Let's see who they believe. The invitation came in a text, too chipper to be genuine. "Family dinner Sunday. Hope you'll come. Love, Mom." No punctuation beyond the period, no emoji, no warmth. I didn't respond, but I showed up. The table was set with the good plates, the ones with the gold trim they only brought out when someone died or graduated. A roast rested at the center like a prop. Candles flickered, though it was still light out. Wine was already poured. It was staged, all of it. Douglas asked about the weather in Sydney. Corinne complimented my scarf. One she gave me for Christmas 10 years ago and later claimed I never wore. Davina said little, just nodded, passed the potatoes. We ate. Or, they did. I moved food around my plate, listening to small talk that smelled like pretense, and then Corinne put her fork down. "I don't understand why you're acting this way, Marla," she said, her voice measured. "You've always been jealous of Davina." The room didn't freeze. It throbbed. She reached for a napkin, dabbed beneath her eyes as tears started to form. "You make everything harder than it needs to be. She's younger. She's trying. We're just trying to help her." Her voice cracked. Then came the sobbing. Not loud, not desperate. Performed. Douglas wrapped his arm around her, rubbing her back like this was grief and not guilt. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I didn't give her what she wanted. After dinner, I walked straight to my car. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, hands resting, breath still even. Then there was a knock on the window. Davina. I unlocked the door. She slid into the passenger seat. Her hands were shaking, just slightly. "I checked my tuition portal," she said, her voice barely audible. She pulled out her phone, turned the screen to face me. It read, "Full academic scholarship." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Mom said you didn't help with school," she continued, "that they paid everything, that you refused." I didn't speak, just breathed. She looked down. "I didn't know," she said again. I really didn't. I nodded once. I know, I told her. That's why I didn't come for you. I came for the truth. We sat in silence. Cars passed on the road behind us. A dog barked 2 streets over. Somewhere, wind chimes sang. Then she reached for my hand, and for the first time in years, I didn't pull away. The room was warm but quiet, as if even the air knew something was coming. I placed my tote beside the coffee table, the one with the too shiny polish and the glass bowl of potpourri that had smelled like lavender for the past decade. Nothing here ever really changed, except the stories. Corinne sat with her back perfectly straight, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Douglas stood behind her like a placeholder, arms crossed, eyes scanning me but never landing. Davina was already there, seated at the edge of the couch, hands folded in her lap. I hadn't spoken since I walked in. Corinne broke the silence. You wouldn't have had that apartment if we hadn't raised you. She said it gently, like it was a truth I'd forgotten and she was doing me a favor. Douglas added, the money, the food, the roof, all of it counts. They reframed everything, every packed lunch, every ride to school, every late bill I paid myself, as a debt I owed them. Life itself apparently had interest. The apartment? Corinne said, her voice rising just slightly. It was never really yours. It was an extension of our generosity. And that was when I moved. No words, no anger, just a slow reach into the tote beside me. I unzipped the leather and pulled out the manila folder, set it gently on the coffee table, covering the shiny polish. I opened it. One by one, I laid them out. The notarized deed, the wire transfer slip, the payment confirmation from the bank, the cruise booking confirmation, the screenshot of the property manager's email. The folder was thin, but it spoke louder than any of us had so far. Davina leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Mom, that's the folder I saw in her apartment. Corinne didn't blink. She didn't need to. The silence between us was too thick now to cut with anything but fact. I looked at her. You called it help. I called it a purchase. Let's see which one the law agrees with. Douglas shifted. Corinne finally blinked, and for a moment, just a breath, her mask cracked. She stood, but she didn't say anything. Douglas looked at the floor. Silence again. Longer this time. Like the air was waiting for someone to rewrite the story, but no one could. Corinne's voice, when it finally came, was thinner than I'd ever heard it. We never meant to hurt you, she said. We just thought we deserved something back. I folded the papers and slipped them back into the folder. Then you should have asked, I said. Not stolen. I didn't slam the door when I left. Davina didn't follow, but her eyes did, and that was enough. The last box I unpacked was labeled MISC, even though I knew exactly what was inside. The contents weren't random. They were the things I hadn't been ready to let go of yet, until now. The apartment in Charlotte was smaller than the one I'd left behind. No balcony, no extra room, just enough. That felt right. Soft music played from a speaker on the counter, something wordless and slow. The kind of music that lets you think without pushing your thoughts too hard. My phone buzzed. Venmo. A request from Davina. Half of the new microwave. I smiled, paid instantly, added a comment, of course, always. The breeze from the cracked window lifted the edge of an envelope on my desk. A letter I'd written the night before, handwritten, signed, addressed to no one really. I don't hate you, I'd written. I just finally love myself more. This wasn't revenge, it was remembrance of what you forgot I gave. I folded the letter, slid it into the drawer. Some things deserve to be said, just not delivered. Later that day, Loretta showed up with a plant. Small, lush, some kind of fern. You should have some green that stays, she said, setting it gently on the windowsill. We didn't talk much about the confrontation. There wasn't anything left to clarify. The facts were facts now. No one was arguing anymore. Davina arrived in the afternoon, carrying Thai takeout and a quiet expression. She didn't mention Corinne. Neither did I. We ate together on the floor. No table yet. Just us and the cartons and a playlist that shuffled too much. We laughed once or twice. Not about anything in particular. Just the way people laugh when silence stops being heavy. She left early, saying she had a shift in the morning. At the door, she paused. Thanks for still being my sister, she said. I looked at her. really looked. You never stopped, I replied. They just tried to write us like we were chapters apart. She smiled, nodded, then walked into the hallway. I didn't watch her go. I turned off the lights, cleaned up the cartons, watered the fern. And as I stood by the sink, the city humming beyond the windows, I thought, sometimes you don't need to burn bridges. Just choose never to walk back across. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's that sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that family doesn't always mean fairness. Boundaries don't make you selfish. They make you whole. I used to think that being quiet was how you earned peace. But now I know peace comes when you stop asking permission to be respected. To anyone watching who's ever felt erased, overlooked, or used, I see you. And I hope my story reminds you that walking away doesn't mean losing. Sometimes, it's how you finally start winning. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved just to protect your own sanity? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this video touched something in you, drop a 1 or share where you're watching from. And if it didn't, tell me why. I want to understand. If you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next one. There's always another chapter. Maybe it's yours.